Well, 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 who could have seen this coming? The thing to bring me out of my hiatus is the very thing that got me to make reviews in the first place. But before we get into the newest FPS Expandalone, it's come to my attention that I forgot to cover 2 previous Serious Sam DLCs. So, for your viewing pleasure, I've decided to briefly cover Legend of the Beast and Jewel of the Nile. So let's get the ball rolling with the least liked Serious Sam DLC. Legend of the Beast was a DLC released for Serious Sam HD back in 2012, a year after Serious Sam 3 was released. Supposedly set during the first encounter, most likely between Metropolis and Alley of the Sphinx, Sam finds himself on the hunt for the Beast, another MacGuffin as an excuse to kill more monsters. And don't get me wrong, the excuse to kill more monsters has never been a problem for this series. But the real problem is that there's twice the number of enemies, but you only have half of your arsenal to fight them with. Going back to what I said about the moments in Serious Sam games where it resets your arsenal, it's a difficult balancing act to strip the player of their weapons and or ammo to make them feel vulnerable against enemies you would normally feel comfortable fighting. And a key factor is that those moments only lasted for an arena or two before you got your ammo back or started recollecting your arsenal. Legend of the Beast, on the other hand, feels like Alley of the Sphinx, but stretched out far too long. The 3 level layouts are fine, with the signature open areas, corridors, and arenas, but with scarce resources, slow acquisition of half of your normal weapons, double the amount of fodder enemies, and powerful enemies you're not equipped to handle when you come across them, it becomes very frustrating to get through these levels. Though it is a godsend they gave you the chainsaw to counter at least some of the oversized mobs that are thrown at you, and it's rather interesting to use it against enemies I usually wouldn't use a chainsaw against. So after you stumble your way through the first level, have some decent highs and irritating lows in the second, and play through a more tedious version of the Tower of Babel, you make it to the thing the whole DLC revolves around: an invincible Kanoom. So how do you defeat this invincible behemoth? You run to the corners of the small chamber while having very little room to evade the beast's attacks, flip the switches, lure the beast to the center, shoot the 2 junctions on the ceiling, and do it at least 3 more times. You know, I might have been a little too harsh with you, Ongzan III. At least I could bring your health down to 1/3 and kill you in 1 beam strike if you were a good boy and went to where you needed to go when you needed to be there. Because when you can't do jack shit to an enemy with your weapons, have barely any room to evade his attacks, and jump through so many hoops for an attack that hinges on the slim chance the boss will be where he needs to be at the right time, I think Sam says it best when you finally defeat him.
I need a vacation.
In summary, Legend of the Beast is 3 new levels with twice the number of enemies, but half the arsenal and half the fun. So I'm going to patiently wait for a brave modder to rebalance all 3 of these levels to show how good Legend of the Beast could have been if it was given more time and care. But until then, I'm going to wash away the frustration with a good Serious Sam add-on. Set between Power of the Underworld and the Lost Temples of Nubai, Sam is on his way for some R&R when Quinn radios in to tell Sam the time lock isn't quite online. She says there's a failsafe that needs to be overwritten, and, as usual, Sam is the only man for the job. So, Sam sets out to crack some alien skulls, raid some tombs, find the failsafe, and kick off BFE's finale. Initially, I said Vanilla BFE was my least favorite Serious Sam game. But when I played the fusion version of BFE, my complaints of slow reloading, small magazines, and sprint and reloading conflicting with one another were addressed. So right off the bat, Jewel of the Nile fusion has a much better feel, compounded by the fact that the laser rifle and sniper rifle are brought back as regular weapons. And though Reptiloids return in this DLC, I'll gladly take them over the BFE Witch Brides any day. As for the gameplay, the 3 levels of Jewel of the Nile are a cut above BFE's better levels. We start with an open level where you go back and forth between pedestals to collect statues in a specific order, all the while dealing with rotating patterns of spawning enemies. Then we have a standard open area level where you fight through enemies to get to your destination. This level is rather enjoyable, especially with the laser rifle and sniper rifle available to you. And look, an Easter egg for Legend of the Beast! But when you get to your destination, you're forced into a tomb where you need to complete 4 platforming challenges to open the door. Now, I know that I said in my Serious Sam 5 proposal video that I wanted platforming sections to break up pacing, But when it's in a dark tomb and your movement speed is impaired, it feels like the game has put on the brakes instead of easing on the gas pedal. The dodging hallway and water room are fine on their own. The wall maze is bearable, if tedious to get through. But the section that involves pushing the correct buttons in order and jumping onto each platform all in the dark can really test one's patience. But once that's done, you open the door, grab the statue, fight your way back to the first tomb, put the statue where it needs to go, and proceed to the level Jewel of the Nile is remembered for. After fighting through a valley of baddies, you find a jetpack and use it in a much more fun way than just sticking lightning rods in the back of another Ungzon. After hopping over the dam, travel a long distance to find the keys, you unlock the pipe and proceed to the final stretch.
There's something for the to-do list. A jetpack that doesn't short out when it gets wet.
Following a rather enjoyable bowling alley fight, you come to the temple and fight one final wave of enemies before you finally find the failsafe. Once it's been deactivated, you head outside to fight the final boss, Raloom, the imposing prototype. To defeat him, strafe to dodge his barrage of cannonballs, get close to sticking with C4, run away to avoid his shock hammer, detonate the C4, and repeat. Unlike the Beast, Raloom's attacks are easy enough to evade, there is room to maneuver, and there is a clear moment of opportunity to damage him over and over until he's dead. So that's Jewel of the Nile. Far better than Legend of the Beast, but regarding how it compares to BFE, I consider it only a slight improvement over the base game. And now, we could finally get to the topic of this video. Back in my Serious Sam 5 pitch video, I mentioned that the next official Serious Sam game should have something that I refer to as the second encounter. An expansion-sized DLC that takes place just before the finale of the base game and about going all out with the weapons and enemies to make it the ultimate Serious Sam experience. Well, it turns out Siberian Mayhem is exactly that for Serious Sam 4. Unlike Jewel of the Nile that feels slightly better than the base game of BFE, Siberian Mayhem smooths most of the rough edges of Serious Sam 4 and refines the formula to make it even closer to the greatness of the original encounters. And I think a big part of that is because the developers of this expand-alone, Timelock Studios, are a collection of Serious Sam modders. And that's one of the things that I forgot to mention about what makes Serious Sam great. Like how Bethesda tiles are practically immortal, mods make games last far longer than a game's usual life cycle. Though Serious Sam isn't as large a community as the big ones, this community is quite a passionate one. So many dedicated fans create amazing levels for Serious Sam, and even create entirely original games in the Serious engine. And I'm happy Crow Team recognized this and hired Timelock to create something special. But enough flattery, let's get started with the actual game. Siberian Mayhem supposedly begins after the second to last level of Serious Sam 4, where Sam is hot on the trail of the traitor General Brand. But you might be thinking, why did I say supposedly? Well, you'll find out at the end, as Sam makes landfall and almost makes an easy callback.
Man, it's cold. But kicking ass should warm me up.
We hit the ground running with the pistol and knife like classic Serious Sam. So first off, let's talk about the weapons. We get most of the Serious Sam 4 arsenal back with some replacements and additions. The first weapon of note is the replacement for the assault rifle.
Oh yeah, things are okay when you have an AK.
Unlike the Tommy gun in Serious Sam 4, which was just a skin for the assault rifle, the AK has two major differences. The first is a smaller magazine of 50, but that is offset by a much appreciated reduced bloom. Thanks to this change, the AK felt useful in the heat of battle when I fired in short bursts against sparse screws of rushing enemies and ADS to headshot distant threats with perfect aim. After the AK, the next weapon is the solution for one of my complaints about Serious Sam 4's arsenal. So, what do you get when you combine the hip-fire accuracy and penetrating power of the Devastator with the balanced fire rate of the pre-Serious Sam 4 sniper rifle? You get the crossbow. This weapon is useful for both close-range kills and distant ones with a brighter scope to make aiming for headshots easier. And the last new weapon is the ray gun. What it is basically is the result of taking the death ray attachment off the laser gun, making it its own weapon, throwing the laser gun out, and giving the new weapon the ability to make enemies explode when killed. And like the death ray from the base game, I have mixed feelings about this weapon in terms of balance, but I won't deny how fun it is to use.
Oh boy, I love this thing. Anyone got any marshmallows? I have to make those ones. It did not go well.
In addition to the new weapons are two new gadgets. a hoverboard scooter which allows you to float around, all the while firing a laser Gatling gun, and the TACT, a target designator for a continuous airstrike. As for new enemies, there's a few to go over. Aldrin microhoppers are what I can best describe as a cross between a Gunnar and a marsh hopper while throwing in the acid spit of the spiders. The Octanian Grenadier, which acts like the beheaded bomber but with more mobility and can summon a homing rolling bomb. The Draconian Burner, which is like the Pyromaniac but with slightly more health and lasers instead of flamethrowers. The Octanian Legionary, whose shield is completely impervious to frontal damage and need either a headshot, backshot, piercing shots, or explosives landed just behind them to be dealt with. And the Octanian Sentry Tower that launches large area attacks and missile barrages and need to have their turrets taken down and wait for their core to be exposed to be destroyed. As for level design, this is where Siberian Mayhem improves the most from Serious Sam 4. Serious Sam 4 had a major problem of being shackled to city streets and flat countrysides most of the time, thus the layouts were bland and uninteresting. But in Siberian Mayhem, Russia offers much more variety despite being a country of ice and snow. We have a maze-like refinery, open fields and ice-covered canyons, train yards, and Russian towns. All the while, there are several additions that add spice to the levels. A good example is this arena that has jump pads. Unlike the infuriating bouncing castles of the second encounter, you can see where you and the enemies will launch from. The other highlight is the third level, Siberiade, where you explore an open world on a snowmobile and ATV. Unlike a breakfast in France where it's a flat open level and you only ride your bike for a few minutes, Siberiade is instead a mountainous region separated into segmented valleys. You could just beeline to the checkpoint to progress to the next valley, but it's a better idea to cruise around the first segment to find keys in enemy outposts to unlock a secret skill point, as well as a very well done side mission. Later, you can fight 3 sentry towers and collect their keys for an additional skill point before the end of the level. So, it seems I was wrong when I said there's nothing unique that Sam can bring to an open world level. It was just that I was given a subpar open world level for Sam to explore. Open world levels can work if the things that are in them are interesting enough. And speaking of which, the side missions are another area Siberian Mayhem improves from the base game. Instead of side missions being a slight detour either through reading a note, talking to an NPC, or getting a radio call from your doctor, side missions in Siberian Mayhem are multi-stage treks through sections of a refinery, a creepy village, and even a mine that ends with a unique boss fight. Going forward, this is the standard that side missions need to aspire to. Also, this expandalone does what I want Serious Sam 5 to do with vehicle sections. While the snowmobile and ATV are normal human vehicles, they're only for getting from point A to B while occasionally detouring to C, D, and E. But the 2 new vehicles that are in their dedicated sections are what vehicle sections should be. The first vehicle is a medium-sized mech that fires rockets and has a chainsaw sword. The second, a Russian tank with a cannon and machine gun with the ability to dash. These vehicles also expose a small weakness that Serious Sam 2 had. I said in my first video that the vehicle sections in 2 were fun but a little monotonous. Well, that was because they were small vehicles with only a meager amount of firepower to go against too many powerful enemies at once. Thus, several of those sections felt like they went on for too long. But the Siberian Mayhem vehicles are powerful enough to be fun, but also vulnerable enough for you to be encouraged to not be too reckless as the damage you take adds up over time. Along with some small puzzles to break up the pacing, the last improvement I could say about the level design is that the secrets are much better. From a variety of gadgets, small resource pickups, classic troll traps, skill points, weapons, Easter eggs, large and small, and even classic maps. Moreover, there aren't any infuriating wall platforming sections that you need to do to get to some secrets. All these additions make for a much more enjoyable experience and make Siberian Mayhem a great addition to the Serious Sam franchise like the other great expandalone games did for their franchises. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Because this is an expansion to Serious Sam 4, many of the technical limitations are still present. I can't truly comment on the graphics or presentation because my new rig isn't a monster like full-time YouTubers are required to have, but I will keep emphasizing that Serious Engine 5 needs to be more stable. And like Serious Sam 4, Siberian Mayhem isn't safe from gadget exploitation.
Man, you can't just stay here and kill them all! Watch!
But despite this, we can move on to the story. Nothing much happens in terms of story considering this takes place just before the finale of 4, but there are several highlights. John Jake Dick still does his job giving Sam his signature one-liners.
Feeling cold? Don't worry, I'll warm you up with my bullets.
And the cringe fest that was Rodriguez is now replaced by Sam's fan club.
I'm Igor Ledov, and this is my valiant partisan squad. Natasha,
Hi.
Vlad,
Hey.
and Ivan. We are your biggest fans, man!
We do get some fun moments with them in the 2 levels they're in, but I will confess I didn't have as much a broken heart when they met their ends as I did for Kenny and Father Mikhail because I had more time to bond with the latter 2. But the best cameo comes from Serious Russia's very own feminine icon.
Eye for an eye, bitches.
Who knew that a few words from the radio would make me giddy for the review of a not dead legend? And speaking of which, I didn't know this when I posted my Serious Sam 4 review, but the voice actor for Bill Corrin, Brad Venable, passed away just 3 days before I finished the video. Had I known at the time, I would have dedicated more of my appreciation for him. So, I give my condolences to his family. He and the character he brought to life with just his voice were a major part of what made me love Serious Sam 4. The world will never be the same without him. Okay, now it's time for my favorite part of the video. Hit the music! Teleporting Major Biomechanoid. Trapped in a small arena, you need to maneuver around some kamikazes and Gnars to land shots on the behemoth as he teleports between 4 spots. Thankfully, the arena isn't too small, so you'll be able to handle the main threat and his lackeys without too much trouble. Draconian Burner. A simple mini-boss introduction for the new enemy. Micro Hopper Room. An homage to my least favorite level in the first encounter. But with more health kits, predictable spawning points, and sprinting, I can maneuver myself into better positions to deal with these buggers in a bearable way. Alpha and Omega. 2 oversized Gnars whose weak spots are their eyes. General Brand, the last human. Basically, the final boss fight we all expected in the main game before Ongzang VI stole his spotlight. In the first phase, he launches diverse projectile and physical attacks to avoid as you whittle his health down. Once you nearly finish him off, he enters Rage Mode and begins Phase 2. Overall, a very good fight where the frustrations are mitigated with your stockpile of hearts on standby. So, seeing as this takes place before the finale of the base game, it's fair to assume that before Sam deals the final blow, the dam will break and wash both alpha males down the river to bring us to the beginning of the finale.
Hey, Sam! Who are you? I'm you from the future. I know it's really cool that you killed Brand, but this timeline does not end well.
Okay, I think it's fair to say at this point that my hope for Serious Sam 5 being the Serious Sam 2 retcon many fans were hoping for is no longer an option. Instead, it seems Crow Team and Time Lock are going to be setting up their very own Samverse. I won't lie in saying I don't feel a little bummed out about this, but on the bright side, it might make every spin-off title and player-made mod canon. But anyway, Siberian Mayhem is a triumph, and the future of the franchise looks bright if Crow Team and Time Lock continue this relationship going forward. With proper management and a good relationship with their publisher and fans, I'm looking forward to these people's next project. So, bravo Time Lock and Crow Team, bravo. So that's my review of Serious Sam, Siberian Mayhem, and it's made me reevaluate what? Wait a minute! All this time! How could I have forgotten? Daemon is a god. The First Encounter soundtrack is a rhythmic and atmospheric masterpiece with the guitars riffing at the most important moments. Best track? The Second Encounter was a great addition with appropriate instruments for the time periods. And Undercoat's contribution for the boss themes are just impeccable. And the cherry on top is the greatest song of the entire Serious Sam franchise. Serious Sam 2's soundtrack was adequate. It does have several good tracks to accommodate the theme of each planet. But nothing really stood out for me, save for the final level. Serious Sam 3 had some good to average tracks fighting through the hordes on the surface. But when you go underground, the tracks really give you a sense of creep. awe. And the 3 songs of the final level really send the soundtrack out on a high note, despite the final boss stumbling for me. As for Serious Sam 4 and Siberian Mayhem, this is where Damon was able to really stretch his legs with original tunes. And spine-tingling callbacks. This man and Michael McCann are 2 artists who don't get enough love from the game music community. Okay, I think that's everything I needed to cover on this series so far. As I was saying, Siberian Mayhem made me reevaluate what I said about my pitch for Serious Sam 5. And initially, I was going to dedicate an extra section of this video for a reworked Serious Sam 5 pitch. But with this video being as long as it is already, it's best to create an entirely new video for it. As for when that video will be made, it'll be a while because I have other projects I want to make first, as well as life that I have to deal with. But I hope you've enjoyed this video that I was able to finally finish, and I hope to see you again when my free time permits it. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you next time.